Hey folks, it's Roger from There Be Giants, and welcome to another edition of Giant Talk. I have to confess, haven't had an episode for probably a couple of months, but I'm kind of more about now sitting down with people that I find really interesting, I think have something to contribute to the whole thing about alignment in organizations and how we can get everyone and everything, understanding the priorities and delivering against the strategy. So when I do find somebody interesting, I'm really keen to have them along, and I'm really pleased to say today that I have someone with me who I have met through professional connections, and I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation. So welcome, Sonia, to Giant Talk. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
No, you're very welcome. Very welcome. So, Sonia, if we could just start by just running through a bit of an intro so that we can the listeners can get a bit of a feel for what you've done and what your focus has been.
Right. Okay. Gosh. Well, I suppose a true practitioner in terms of HR. I've worked at board level for 15 years, been in HR for far too many years. I'm a qualified coach, qualified mediator. And a couple of years ago, I upsticked from the UK, moved to France and started my own business, which was a coaching business, but trying to democratise coaching. Now we move that on, and I've got some very exciting news that fits in with our business alignment. So I can't wait to share a little bit more about it in a little bit.
Fantastic. That's great to hear, Sonia. So, as you know, the theme of the podcast originally kind of grew out from the evolution of OKRs, and OKRs are being used for really helping to enable alignment through organizations. And we kind of look at alignment as a broader term, and if you like, a broader challenge now for organizations, because indeed OKRs is not the only means by which alignment can be built. There's a lot more that, if you are using OKRs, there's a lot more you need to wrap around it for starters. Okay. And something that I've always experienced when I worked in, I used to work in a very large IT corporate, almost sort of utility IT sort of infrastructure. And I noticed time and time again that, it didn't really matter what the priorities were at the top as they were disseminating through the organization. When they got to, that second, and in particular that first line where they were on the front line, it was a bit hit and miss as to whether they were fully understood and clear, and even if they were clear, whether people were able to kind of understand what they meant for what they should be focusing on. Does that reflect your experience?
Absolutely. I think organisations, and I'm going to generalise here, organisations find it really difficult to take those strategic goals and disseminate them down into the organisation, because you're having to break them down each step. So every time we go down a rung in terms of the organisational structure, we have to disseminate them a little bit more, make them more tangible, make them more understandable, and it all gets a bit lost. And I think organisations as a whole do struggle to just get those first, second line managers and just general staff really understanding what their part is in the organisation. And it then doesn't, when you add it back up, it doesn't equal the same as it was when you started breaking it down. And it's a real misalignment in terms of goal setting.
There's almost been some erosion as it's disseminated through the organisation, some dilution or erosion, whatever term you want to put on it, but it's not quite the same. Even if it rolls back up, in terms of the output, the impact, it's not, there's always something that isn't quite there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that, if we use a particular word, say pick a word, politics, dog, whatever it is, and you ask 10 people what that meant to them, it would all mean something slightly different. And that's what we get when we have goals rolling down the organisation. everything starts to mean something slightly different.
What's that one from? What's that old Chinese whispers? So send reinforcements, we're going to advance, or send reinforcements, we're going to a dance.
Absolutely, it's exactly that. Sorry, go on, Roger.
No, go ahead, please.
No, and I was going to say, the most important, this is a real personal opinion, I'm a big advocate of servant leadership. So the most important individuals are those doing the doing, those on the on the ground floor, on the front line, whatever. They're the most important people, because they're either servicing your clients, or they're building the product, whatever it is. They're generally doing the most of the doing. And therefore, it's really important they understand why they're doing it. What's the reason behind them being there?
I'm taken back to a part of my sort of 4 or 5 years of my career. I spent leading a large engineering and logistics facility, which had about 300 or 400 people in it. And it was an interesting experience, because they were very blue-collar workers. Okay, they were very much focused on come in, do their shift, and go home. And to really get them interested and really connected with the work was a huge challenge. Plus, also, the organisation itself, that particular operation, was on the verge of being outsourced because its service levels had been tanking for a long time. And I asked the divisional director whether I could go in and try and turn it around, because, to be honest, I've been selling the services of that operation for 5 or 6 years, and I was so sick to death of having to explain to clients, poor service levels. I was just like, let me go in there, and I've been on the front line. Maybe I can, unlike the previous operations managers that had been in there, maybe I can bring a slightly different perspective to this. And it was around the same time where the wider organisation, was really starting to embrace lean working practice. Now, lean comes with quite a few negative concerns, labels, but we were given the option to kind of pick and choose the tools within the lean toolbox, which we thought were going to really work in our area. They weren't coming in with a one-size-fits-all. So I was able to use tools that really helped with communication, tools that really helped with problem solving, and with that came a whole degree of empowerment, which they never got before. And it was really interesting that, obviously this didn't happen overnight, and I can remember being stood there on the second or third day in front of the entire workforce, and people literally standing up and shouting at me and saying, "Oh, so how long are you going to be here for?" Because I think the tenure of leadership in that operation was probably no more than about 6 to 9 months. I was there for nearly 4 years.
Very well done.
But I think what really helped was there was some trust that needed to be built, because they needed to trust me that I wasn't there just to kind of, tread water and then move on, that I had their interests at heart. But at the same time, what I was trying to do was I was trying to get them to understand the impact of the wider business, the commercial organisation in which they existed. And I'll loop back to that point about the why, and help them understand how the impact of the quality and performance of their work directly impacted, or rather the output of, directly impacted the customer's experience, and whether, and it wasn't an end user. These were big high street banks. And if we didn't get the configuration of the equipment right, and if it wasn't right when the engineers unpacked it in the branch overnight to replace all the IT equipment in the branch, then that branch didn't open the following morning. And you can imagine a high street bank not being able to open the following morning, and the fallout from that, and all the commercial penalties that we'd get hit by, and so on and so forth. But I managed to get them connected to the why there, and it was, so there was introducing that sense of purpose, but at the same time connecting them with the data around how are we doing? How are we doing on quality? How are we doing on output? How are we doing on performance? Oh, something's gone wrong. I'm not going to bollock them. I'm just going to get, ask why 7 times to get down to the bottom so that we can all collectively solve the problem together. And it just, it turned it around, and it actually saved it from being outsourced. They decided to keep it. Yeah.
The people who know what's happening are those generally doing the job.
Yeah.
Just got to go and ask them.
Yeah.
Deal with them as humans. People behave in a manner in which you expect them to.
Yeah.
So, if you go about thinking that somebody's not going to do a job because they're just this or they're just that,
yeah,
that's how they're going to behave. And so when we talk about, aligning goals, etc., there starts sometimes, and not always, but sometimes there gets to be a point where the more senior person thinks that the individuals below them don't care or they're not interested. No, that's their view of them. That's not the individuals themselves. People often see others, through a lens that isn't correct. Our brain has an amazing ability to take what it sees and turn it into fact, or make up its own facts. If you feel hungry, you might not be hungry. You could be thirsty, but your brain's just telling you you're hungry. Your brain isn't always correct. And the same happens in business. Managers will go, that team don't care. No, it's probably because you're not giving them the opportunity to care. So when we start to disseminate goals, we've got to do it in a way that's very simple. It's meaningful. As you say, it makes that connection. Because people aren't going to be engaged if you don't ask them what they think.
Yeah.
If you tell them what to do all the time, it's not a great experience, is it? And if you're not getting a great experience in work, but you have to be there, you are literally just going to turn up.
And that was that sort of, is it, what do they call it? Presenteeism? Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I had when I started there. Literally, they were turning up to get the beer tokens on a Friday and leave. And that was it, but here's a question for you. And I don't think we're going off topic here, but I'm just curious because I'm thinking about what could get in the way of building alignment at the first and second level here. And you talk about, if you want to know what's wrong or what would work better, ask the people who are doing the job. Do you think that the manager in that scenario might not necessarily have the self-confidence and the personal security in personal belief in themselves to go and ask? Do you think they might feel a bit exposed by that? They might feel like, well, it's down to me to have all the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, it's a huge leap when you go from let's say an individual contributor into leading a team. You're going from 80% being about you to 80% being about somebody else. And that's a huge shift for individuals to make. And people do lack confidence. They think as a leader or as a manager, you should know everything. And I always say, the CEO doesn't know everything. The CEO can't know everything. Otherwise, their brain would probably, create lots of problems because there's just too much to know. But it's about having the trust and confidence to go and ask the questions and also being okay with getting it wrong. It's not about being perfect. It's about doing the best and being human in that as well. And I think I have to say I've met some leadership teams that also don't think their individuals know. They don't think the people on the shop floor know what's best, which is a different way of operating, but it still exists out there. So confidence is one. Lack of knowledge. So they don't know how. It's not that they're not even confident. They just don't know how. Taking that transition from having probably been a part of the team to stepping up to leading the team is a huge transition. Amplified when you're then a manager managing other managers. That's, again, another step up. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, organisations don't have the time or money to be able to spend on developing individuals, and they get promoted without that development. And then you go through that period of whether people either make it or they don't.
I mean, it's that thing where someone gets promoted and they really think they have to prove themselves. They've had faith in me, they believe in me, they've promoted me. Therefore, I can't show any sign of weakness. I can't show any sign of failure. I can't show that I don't know something. Do you know what? I can look back in my over my sort of early stages in management, and I can see a lot of that I felt as well. I can really strongly identify with a lot of that.
Yeah, and people start controlling more because they don't want to let go. They get scared.
Yeah,
and they've probably been told that they can't fail. So that kind of you get that classic where people they're afraid they get to the point they're afraid to do anything, because they don't want to let go of anything because they lose control, but they can't control everything. They can't do everything. Their teams become disengaged because they're not involved. So you get into a really negative cycle, and it's not fair. It's not fair on the individual you've put into that role that we let it happen.
No,
it's wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it isn't a good recipe for high performance management or leadership for that matter, is it? You're almost I think back to I've done some study, very basic study around sort of neuroscience and the impact of how our brains react to certain situations particularly in the point of view of management situations, and that type of state that you're just describing there, it means that someone will be permanently in living with the stress hormones, which shut down our ability to be creative, be objective, and all those really useful characteristics which we need to be when we have problems that we need to solve as managers and leaders.
Absolutely. There's research that will show specifically about new to role, 50% will fail in 2 years. Some of those will leave. Some will probably, stay in place but won't be happy. Some will, they'll move into a different role. And that's because we've not prepared people. Now, if we're not preparing our colleagues to do a great job, how do we expect even alignment to business goals to happen? Bringing it back round to that alignment. If we can't actually spend that time and effort to develop people, to build their confidence, etc., how are we going to expect them to take those business objectives and actually deploy them in the way in which is going to actually help the business to succeed in whatever it's going to do?
Exactly, because a business objective is there to be focused on. It's probably not going to be asking them to just do more of the same. It's probably going to be asking them to do, a lot more of the same, so an increase in volume, or it's going to be asking them to change things and do things differently. In which case, if it's probably more, it's probably with just what you've got, or perhaps even less. So there's a problem to solve.
Yeah.
Or if it's something new, well, there's another problem to solve. What does that look like, and how do you transition over to it? There's a whole heap of, problem solving which needs to go on there, and which requires tapping into that creativity. So yeah.
It does, and you can't be creative if you've not got a level of self-confidence in what you're doing. Because as you say, your head is too wrapped up in stress to be even to find a gap, to be able to use that gap in your mind to be able to do anything that's going to actually move you forward. And that can be the simplest things. And sometimes we forget that people genuinely come to work to do a good job. They really do. They don't want to. Why would they want to be in a workplace for 8 hours and be miserable? God, that's, and it happens. We know it happens. You can see engagement scores or or MPS schools, whichever schools you use, you'll have teams that aren't engaged. But for me, it's not about engagement per se. It's about the experience. Because experience will give you an outcome of engagement. But if you focus on the experience that the individual's having, and that part of that experience is the what, the why, the how, all those really key questions, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? They all link back to that. What is the purpose of that role? And the purpose of, and if that role wasn't required, the organisation shouldn't have the role. So therefore, it's a really important role, isn't it?
Yeah.
The post is important because it's in the organisation.
Yeah.
So therefore, why aren't we optimising it? Why aren't we optimising the output and making sure that it follows that golden thread all the way up through the organisation? It always reminds me of the Cape Canaveral story, and I can't.
Oh yeah.
When he goes into Cape Canaveral and talks to the guy, he says, "What are you doing?" And it's the janitor. He says, "I'm helping to put men on the moon." He knew that his role was really important, and that's what we sometimes lack.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was trying to achieve in that engineering operation to help them understand how important their roles were. So. Okay, so we said how terrible it is and how difficult, how challenging frontline alignment can be. Share with me and the listeners, if you will, what you believe can enable it. What can we do to improve it and support it and make it even better?
Well, I think first of all, making sure that the goal is, the overall vision is written in a way which people understand. Test it. Go out and test to make sure that it's written in a manner which people actually understand it. And it has less of an opportunity, goes back to your point earlier about being diluted as it moves around the organisation. That for me is step one. Step two, when you're actually doing those goals, train people. Train people in goal setting, train people in communication, train people how to manage it. Don't think it's just going to happen. And just because you might have trained somebody a couple of years ago, it doesn't mean to say that they've got it now. Genuinely help people. If you're a leader, genuinely help your individuals in your teams to unlock any barriers that they might have to success. Could be the simplest things, but help them to unlock those barriers to success. So for me, communication, I think it's more communication. You can never communicate too much of the right thing. You can communicate too much of the wrong thing. We know that. But you can't communicate too much of the right thing. Simple, sharp deployment, nothing too long. Nobody's ever going to read a 2-page document about your goals or your objectives or anything else. And as you probably, hopefully would agree with, you can have too many objectives. Personally, not a fan of annual objectives because I think they change too much. But everybody should know what their priority objectives are for the next 3 months or whatever that time period you have. But it's not, for me, it's not a static thing neither.
No.
Your goals, you're going to have to keep reviewing them. Because the world changes. 5 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, we had that thing called COVID. Everybody's goals changed. So you needed to galvanise, realign and set people up again for success. But a lot of organisations do it once a year, job done, and then leave it. And you're never going to get over some of the barriers by doing that. It has to be a live thing that's there all the time. It should just be in your general drumbeat of the organisation.
That's exactly how we describe it. Actually, we use the term drumbeat, and you're right. A 12-month objective at anything but perhaps strategic level, top level of the organisation, really doesn't fit anymore because you mentioned COVID. Yes, that was an absolutely valid example. But the hand grenade, which is blowing everybody's strategy apart at the moment is AI.
Yeah.
And, you can't possibly work at the lower levels of the organization on 12-month objectives and say, right, okay, there's this new thing called AI, but we're going to wait until the end of this year before we decide how we put it in place or something like that. So you're right, you need that 3-month. It's that balance between giving clarity for a period of time so that people can actually knuckle down and focus on something, but not fixing it for too long that it then risks becoming outdated.
Absolutely. Because as soon as it's outdated, why would anybody be engaged with it?
Yeah.
They'll look at it and go, makes no difference anymore.
Exactly. And I can remember, and I'm sorry to say, but it was usually HR that was driving this. I can remember getting to the end of the year, and digging out the annual objectives that were set, 11 months previously, and in the final month, trying to work out whether they have, whether they've been met. And really kind of looking at them thinking, well, actually, these aren't bloody relevant anymore, so who benefits from that? Well, anyway.
Nobody. Somebody's just come up my drive, Roger. My dogs are literally, once they twig, are going to go ballistic. No.
Right, well.
Back down my drive again.
Okay.
They're obviously in an electric car is all I can say, because the dogs haven't twigged yet. Right.
Okay,
you might have
not
to
to worry.
that bit out because they're going to go mad because they haven't gone back down the drive. Right.
Okay.
We'll continue.
So, okay. So, what are the tools or approaches that we could use to help those people that find themselves in the first and second line of management? What are those tools that we could use to help them with those challenges that we've talked about? Whether it be from an organizational process point of view, or more perhaps even at a personal, dare I say, psychological level as well. What are the tools that we could use?
Well, I think the first one is one that we all have an amplitude ability to use, which is communicate. But it's one of the most difficult things that managers find to do because of they're scared, they don't know how, they don't want to step over the line, they don't want to do lots of things. And sometimes they don't have time. I'm not quite sure how you can never not have time to talk to your teams, but anyway, sometimes they don't have time. For me, there's that overarching one, and you've mentioned it before. Goal alignment, performance management isn't a HR thing. It's a business thing.
Yes.
And if any organisations out there believe it's a HR thing, which lots do, it's not been led in the right place.
Oh, you're speaking my language.
HR should absolutely help to come up with the process. Should help to ensure that individuals know how to use it, work with the managers. But this is a business process. It's about delivering business goals. How can it be HR?
Yeah.
So, make sure that the whole business owns it. And then communicate and train. And, develop your people to have all the tools that they need. You don't need a great big fancy system to be able to set great goals. You might want to have a fancy system if you want to record them, but not to have them. And actually, it's about setting them that's more important. Process behind that, you could, whatever is easy, but the harder you make it to use, the less likely you are going to make it stick.
Absolutely. And I think that point about not having too many really goes to that as well, because the more you have, the heavier the whole system and bureaucracy becomes. And I've gone into quite a few organizations who have found themselves like drowning under the weight of what they've created for themselves. And you have to strip it back. You have to make it light. You have to make it focused. You have to be ruthless about what it is that you focus on.
Absolutely. I always say it's much harder to create simplicity than it is complexity.
Yeah.
Anybody can make something really difficult to use.
Yeah.
But it's a skill to make it easy.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So do you have any particular tools in mind that could be of use in this scenario?
Well, there's lots of tools. We personally have one. We are currently at MVP stage of our situational coach, which is a adaptive learning gamified platform for management skills. So that real first, second line manager population that it's not difficult to train, but many organisations don't have the time, don't always have the budget. But this is a simple app that really blends technology with human touch. So it's, I'm going to use another brand to describe it. It's the Duolingo of management skills.
Right.
But we also have coaching in there. So those cohorts within organisations have coaching conversations in groups to help them to embed learning. And, it's accessible anytime. It's based on situations, so how simple can you get in terms of we're not trying to teach policy process. We're just trying to help managers to engage more and to create experiences for their colleagues. And that in itself will help them to, be able to deliver what the business needs them to deliver.
Okay. And you say it's at MVP stage. So how close to launch are we?
Oh, literally a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty imminent then.
We're looking for early adopters, right. But we are literally a week away from being able to make some of our clients live, which is fantastic. So it's really exciting, getting great reviews from everybody who sees it. But again, I have to say, simplicity is very difficult, and this is it's taken a while for us to get here. But we're really excited about the difference that it can make to that first, second line management population. So those key guys and girls who are literally managing the vast majority of the workforce.
No, I think it's if you can crack it at that point, then the impact on organisational performance is significant, absolutely significant. Okay, so we'll put in the show notes details of how people can hopefully find the way to the situational coach. Do you want to just share with us, though, how people can find it?
Yeah, sure. Either touch base with me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly easy to find on LinkedIn, or just pop me an email at sonia@thesituationalcoach.com. Okay. We do have a website, Situational Coach, so you'll be able to find us there as well.
Okay, brilliant.
We'd love to set up a demo for anybody who's interested.
Okay, excellent. And you have some launch customers by the sounds of it already? We do, yeah, we do. We have some early adopters who will be going live next week. And then we're ready to welcome everybody into our arms. Fantastic. Welcome to the realms of product leadership then. Yeah. Okay, Sonia, I thank you so much for giving me and the listeners your time. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure our listeners have got plenty from it as well. And I wish you the best of luck with the situational coach. And thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Giant Talk, and I look forward to being with you on another episode very soon. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.